Have you ever heard of FIRPTA, the Foreign Investment in Real Property Act of 1980? Very generally, this law requires that if seller is foreign, as defined by the IRS regulations, buyer may be required to withhold a certain percentage of the sales price from the seller and send such funds to the IRS along with certain forms within 20 days of closing. The purpose of this law is to help the IRS collect any capital gains from foreign persons who may not otherwise have an incentive to file a U.S. tax return and pay their taxes. This does not mean that seller will owe the funds withheld. If they do not end up owing the full amount withheld, the sellers are able to apply for a refund. To help parties comply with this law, paragraph 20 of your contract, the paragraph titled Federal Tax Requirements, states, if seller is a foreign person, as defined by the Internal Revenue Code and its regulations, or if seller fails to deliver an affidavit or a certificate of non-foreign status to the buyer that seller is not a foreign person, then buyer shall withhold from the sales proceeds an amount sufficient to comply with the applicable tax law and deliver the same to the Internal Revenue Service together with appropriate tax forms. The question becomes, who is foreign, defined by the IRS, for purposes that they need to know for withholding taxes. Under the IRS regulations, foreign persons are non-resident aliens, which means they are not a U.S. citizen or a resident alien. Then the question is, what constitutes a resident alien? A resident alien is someone who either meets the green card test or the substantial presence test. To meet the green card test, you must be a lawful, permanent resident of the United States during the calendar year, which means you have been given the privilege, according to immigration laws, of residing permanently in the United States as an immigrant. And generally, that means you have been probably issued a green card. Sellers should know if they have a green card. The substantial presence test, on the other hand, is a little less obvious. The general rule is that in order to meet this test, you must be physically present in the U.S. on at least 31 days during the current year and 183 days during the 3-year period that includes the current year and the 2 years immediately before that, counting all the days you were present in the current year and 1/3 of the days you were present in the first year before the current year and 1/6 of the days you were present in the second year before the current year. Yes, it's difficult to follow. More details regarding the specifics of the test and how it is to be calculated can be found on the IRS website. Now, while the title company does the best they can to help answer questions on FIRPTA, we can't do the math for the seller or tell them if they meet the test. If they have questions as to whether or not they meet the substantial presence test, they should consult a CPA. One additional question we get asked all the time with respect to FIRPTA is how much is the withholding is the required amount by the buyer. It is either 10 or 15% of the sales price, not proceeds. The general rule is that it is 10% of the sales price when the sales price is $1 million or less and the buyer is an individual acquiring the property for use as buyer's residence. However, there is an exception to withholding if the sales price is $300,000 or less if it is to be used as buyer's primary residence. So, it is 10% of the sales price for purchase of an individual's primary residence priced greater than $300,000 and up to $1 million. Otherwise, it's 15% of the sales price. With it being based on the sales price versus proceeds, there is an issue as to whether or not the seller has enough proceeds after the closing costs, payoffs, etc., to cover the 10 or 15% of the sales price. If the sellers will not have enough proceeds, they should get with a CPA before going under contract to apply for a withholding certificate from the IRS, which may excuse or reduce the withholding, but without such an exemption, buyers are required to withhold the full amount. If you have any more suggestions for our tip of the week, please email us at tipoftheweek@allegiancetitle.com. Let us be your trusted resource for results at the closing table. We would love the opportunity to work with you.